Hello, everyone. My name is Paula Wall. I'm the Assistant Director over at the Port Washington Children's Center. And today I am joined by my friend and colleague, Yael Sommer, who is the center's social worker. And since we last met with you, we have had a topic on our minds that we thought was just so relatable to so many of us, which is quarantine quarreling. When we started to do our research, we realized that there are so many symptoms that are surfacing in our households, things like insomnia or anger, um, depression, anxiety, certainly. And if we were to look to the extreme, even possibly post-traumatic stress disorders. Um, One of the things that I think also exacerbates the entire situation is if we are quarantining with our family where young children might be present. The statistics are even higher for those of us in those situations. These days, we are worrying about our own health, the health of our children, um, finances, perhaps even finding food. And then, of course, you've got the homeschooling responsibilities on top of all that. Um, so before we get into uh, a little bit about stress, I think on behalf of Yael and myself, we wanted to say if there are any of you out there who are watching us who are also experiencing some psychological distress because you may not be working at the moment, or you may have been laid off, you certainly have our sympathy, and we hope that things turn around for you soon. Yael, if you could be kind enough to just talk a little bit to us about what stress feels like and how it really impacts us.
Sure. When we are feeling stressed, a hormone in our brains gets triggered. It's called cortisol, and it basically ignites the fight or flight response in our bodies, which puts us in survival mode. Um, so all those good higher executive functions that we normally rely on, like good judgment and rationalization and problem solving, conflict resolution type of skills, they just go out the window in those moments of survival mode. And it's kind of like that primal part of our brain that evolves the latest. Um, so essentially what that means is that when we're frustrated, we end up hurling accusations at others, we end up criticizing our loved ones, our voices may rise, our tones will change, and we're not modulating those kind of responses because our anxiety and stress is so high at this time. So, you know, it's evident in our behavior. With children, it presents a little differently, right? They
Mm-hmm.
don't, even if they have the communication and the language, they're not often apt to saying, well, I'm feeling angry right now because of this, or because you're doing that. They might show it in other ways. Can you tell us, Paula, a little bit about how children
Sure.
present stress?
Absolutely. Um, I'm just thinking of my own children who are so much older now, but children almost always react either physically or behaviorally because they, as you said, they are lacking sometimes the vocabulary to be able to express exactly what they're feeling. So for little ones, we may we may observe that they're having difficulty concentrating. We may find them very moody. They may be more short tempered. They may be super clingy to us. They may be more afraid than they typically are, whether that's afraid of strangers. Okay, that we usually expect that. But, you know, sudden fears like being afraid of the dark when they, in their same, they're obviously their same sleep patterns. They may have a nervous habit now and be biting their nails. They may seem to withdraw from other members of the family. Um, Physically, though, I think physically they might have more of an appetite, or maybe they don't have an appetite at all. They may say they are experiencing tummy aches. They may have headaches. You and I talked
Pretty
about
red, red.
regression. Yeah, we talked about, I was just thinking, we talked about regression the last time we met with people, and nightmares and things like that. So these are all physical and behavioral indicators that the children are experiencing stress just like us. Um, and then, how families choose to cope with stress is a very individual thing. I know you and I were talking about that before, Yael. Um, some families, when they're feeling stressed, just avoid confrontation. They withdraw from each other. They give each other a silent treatment, and then others are super sensitive and they pounce on each other and they verbally attack each other. But I think that when we recognize stress in ourselves and we allow ourselves to become reflective, um, then we open ourselves up to be able to heal. We open ourselves up for being able to do something about that stress. And if you want to cover a couple of those things, that'd be great, Yal.
Sure. It's so easy for us to get into those accusations, but sometimes it starts with just putting ourselves in the other person's shoes and just trying to see things from their perspective. It might mean giving them the benefit of the doubt, which is what we hope to get from other people, right? We hope other people will give us that sort of courtesy. We forget that sometimes with close loved ones. We take it for granted, and we just push past that, and sometimes push to the limits. So it really can start with seeing the other person's perspective and offering a little bit of empathy to begin with. you
Mm-hmm.
know Reading between the lines, to know that when someone's angry, maybe that's just a mask for feelings of hurt, sadness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so what we want to do is say something like, I can understand that it's been difficult for you. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean that you know, you're not necessarily apologizing for your own behavior there or condoning whatever they're saying necessarily. It's just a way of connecting in the moment instead of flaring up and letting things escalate to another place.
Right.
And then it's all about listening too. You really want to be able to hear what it is they're trying to say. They may be mad about something, but when you dig a little further, you might understand that they're as frustrated as you in this moment, during these days of quarantine, and they're looking for that little piece of space in the home where they can do their thing, whether it's work, or whatever it is. But I think essentially when we use those skills of empathy and listening with intention, you know it can stop us from continuing to butt heads, and allow us to have more adaptive communication with each other that lends for more, for improved, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. An
solutions.
improved situation. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would have said, the old cliche of the family meeting, everybody trying to sort of come together and just remembering that, as the national saying goes, we're all in this together. So if you're able to kind of gain a little bit of self-control and get the members of the family together so that you can work on understanding each other, then you can create this solution together and go forward. And
It's a
then
way of
sometimes,
acting as a team,
yeah,
right? The
yeah,
point is to act as a team and plan together. Maybe figure out what the conflicts are
yeah,
so that you can tackle them together using problem solving techniques together,
right.
rather than just being so frustrated with each other all day.
Yeah, and I think that together is a key word. I mean, I'm just picturing if I was bringing the members of my family together and I was sort of saying, this house is a mess. Okay, everybody knows it. We're all trying to ignore it, but I say, okay, it's a fact. This house is a mess. Now, how can we work on this together so that it isn't a mess, and allow and listen to one another so that
Maybe you
together
call a
we've come
family
up with a,
meeting.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe you
And I
call
think
a
that's,
family meeting and you establish some rules.
yeah.
Maybe, if if you're working and your child continuously opens the door and comes to you and interrupts your work, maybe one of the rules that needs to get established is that if you see, mommy's door closed, then, knock, then
Hmm.
please knock on the door before coming in. Maybe
Hmm.
it's a simple rule like that. Maybe if a brother needs to do his homework, and a younger sibling wants their attention and wants to play with that child, maybe you establish a rule that just says, when this door is closed, it means your brother needs private time. He loves you, and he will be able to play with you later. So you're just sort of explaining to each member of the family what those needs are that need to be respected going forward.
I think though sometimes, um, when they're concrete like that, it's perhaps a little bit easier than when they're based on behavior. So, for instance, if there's, one member of the family that uh, has had the main responsibility of looking after the children these days, and when the roles switch, you notice that the other member of this family doesn't seem to have the patience, or is far more tightly wound, or super fussy, to be able to find the right words to present a message where you're saying, what can I, how can we discuss, or what can I do to make it easier for you so that when it's your time to be with the children, it doesn't seem so overwhelming,
Right.
you know, or it's something that doesn't seem so, um, I don't know, causes impatience or whatever, or,
Or
or is
overwhelming. I think a
is
lot of parents
overwhelming,
are
or
overwhelmed.
less stressful. We're going back to stress, and is less stressful. What can I do? Because I don't face those same problems. I don't have those same obstacles. So what can we figure out together to make it less overwhelming when you have the children? But I think that the important thing to do when you have those conversations about behavior is to just be really sensitive to the language, because there's a lot to be said for constructive criticism,
Mm. And
and
tone.
yeah, and tone, and I think that what you have to do is stick to the solution and think about the words that can allow you together to make the next time a better one. And
When you talk about constructive criticism, I think sometimes people feel like they are saying something because they have to say it because it will make the situation better. But really, it can only do that, um, when the change is still a possibility.
yeah,
If the person can't do anything about it, then there's no point in giving that constructive
right,
criticism. It's just
right,
hindsight at that point. And in
right.
this moment, they might not be able to hear it.
That's
But
true.
I think this time also calls for some fun family moments, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I think that always, when we see a child, um, that struggles sometimes at the center, one of our first sort of responses is, let's recommend some quality time with one of the parents at home. And in the same vein, I want to say that families need to be able to have fun together right now.
yeah.
It's imperative, because and they also need time alone.
Hmm.
But it's so important that they have that good time where they can build trust and communication, and then be able to separate and get their work done. And but they rely on that time together to foster that sense of trust,
Yeah.
to be able to withstand the other times.
Yeah. And I think for adults, we need to remind ourselves that we are able to have fun with them. Um, I know, I mean, you and I have joked about, time for mommy, mommy time, mommy juice, and mommy activities, and all those things. And they're really important. It's really important to have an outlet for ourselves where we can de-stress. But just also knowing that it's important to share time with our children and to find those moments where we can giggle, because that actually, I'm sure you'd be the one to better comment on it, but you physically de-stress when you are laughing.
Yeah,
So
it raises
it's
your
important.
endorphins.
Yeah,
Right?
right. um I was trying to think. I was saying, when we take time for ourselves, I mean, I know where my brain goes, unfortunately, all too readily. But things like, if we possibly can find the time to read a book, if we can possibly find the time to just do some healthy stretches or walk through the neighborhood, um,
Or
you
even
know,
do some simple gardening.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
writing. If you write in a journal, we've talked
Put the
about that
music on
before.
and dance a little bit while you're cooking or doing the
Yeah.
dishes.
But I think what's also good is that it's okay to have that moment where, you know, you have something that's for you. So even if it's not with your partner and you say, this is my TV show, or this is my snack, my chocolate bar, whatever it is, that's just, perhaps I'm sharing too much, that's just for you. Um, so that there is that feeling of like, okay, I've taken ownership of my own self-care. And that's an important thing to do, to
It's
remember the
recoup
things.
time,
Yeah,
right?
the
The
things that
chance
calm
to
us down.
recoup from the day.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Um, so unfortunately, when we think about those, we go from calming moments to moments that are not so calm, or when resentment comes in, or when the quarreling takes place. um, could you talk a little bit about, sort of like, well, what happens to the members of our family, especially the youngest members of our family, when they do observe their parents fighting?
yeah. Unfortunately, it does take a toll on children when they see parents fighting. Although arguing is normal, right?
Yeah,
We're only human. We're going to argue, especially with our loved ones. We feel most comfortable with them. A lot depends on whether we are able to remain respectful during those moments, during those arguments and quarrels. I think when children see us be able to modulate our voices, even during moments of disagreement and difference, they learn from that, right? We're basically teaching them how to deal with conflict with each other, which is normal.
right,
What happens when we lose, when we go outside of that range, right, where things get really heightened, where we can lose control, get explosive, hurl accusations, as we said, or name call, where we go to that forbidden place, right?
mm-hmm.
That's sort of off the edge. That's where it can be really hurtful, not just to each other, but especially to our little ones who don't understand what all that means. Children
Right,
even feel guilty. They take blame for seeing their parents fight. They often think, because they see the world revolving around them,
yeah.
they often feel they are to blame for their parents fighting. So we
you,
do have to be careful.
you get this vicious cycle, don't you? Because you have the parents who are stressed, they start arguing. The children observe it, they start stressing out, and then it just becomes this cycle of stress in the family. um,
Absolutely.
I mean, I've heard people say that they've had a code word. I've heard couples say that they've had a code word that they've gone to. So when they know that they've given a couple of jabs, and they've really kind of, they're not in the zone, they're out to make a point, they're you
And it's
know it,
hard. It's hard to
it's
stop in
very
that moment.
hard. It's very hard
You
to
might be
kind of
feeling
pull back.
defensive, right?
Yeah,
You might be in that place where you're trying to
yeah,
make the point that you're saying. It's the hardest thing to just stop yourself in the moment, and have your partner stop as well, to
right.
take a breath. But having that code word I think when we were speaking before, you said sunshine, and
Yeah,
having
yeah,
that positive image of a break and something lovely to take you um, off of that path that you were taking with the
yeah.
fighting.
I
Well,
think the good thing about that as well, Yael, is that it kind of it's sort of like a safety net. It's kind of like, wait a minute, I've got to this point. We both need the same way that we would have, a thinking chair, or that moment at school we would say, wait a minute, we need to
time
step
out.
back
It's a
and
timeout.
relax. But so it allows us to kind of reset ourselves. But I think the bigger piece is it also makes us very much aware of the consequences and who's out and who else is nearby. So it kind of immediately forces us to be, wait a minute, it's not about me right now. I have to think about the children. I have to think about who else is present. And that can sort of immediately be very sobering and
Yeah.
kind of like, okay, we have to cut this out. Um,
But I
so
think if the
that's a
children
good thing.
do witness
Yeah.
any kind of explosive fighting, I think it's
Yeah.
okay to go to them and have a conversation with them, explaining that you're human, that you argue,
Yeah.
but that you still love each other, that
Yeah.
you're still in a loving relationship, and that you love your family, that you're always going to take care of them as children, together. You
Mhm.
know, I think that it is okay to admit when we lose control and to be able to say later, maybe mommy should have, I need to work on
Yeah.
controlling my temper sometimes. I need to work on staying calmer when I get frustrated. That happens
Right.
to me sometimes. I'm still
Right.
working on it.
Right.
I think that's okay.
I think also the big piece is that when we um, see these things in each other, that sorry, hon, excuse me, family living, that the big piece is that aside from being aware of each other and taking that step back, that when our children are able to witness us solve a situation, it's also teaching them lessons with others. We will not be, God willing, quarantined forever. So being able to observe, how mommy and daddy or any adult in the family was able to resolve something is a
Yeah.
really good lesson for them, you
On,
know?
on how to navigate conflict
Yeah,
and resolution
absolutely. Absolutely.
within the family or outside of it, just in
Yeah,
general. I
yeah.
agree. Um, and I think that sometimes children, when there is a pattern of explosive behavior in the home and parents are not sort of monitoring or modulating
Hmm.
their arguments and their reactions, I think that after a while, bless
Excuse
you,
me.
Paula,
Thank you.
um, after a while, children can internalize that, and
Sure.
they sometimes have symptoms,
Yeah.
real physical symptoms like stomach aches, headaches, whether they're at home or at school.
Hmm.
Um, uh,
They sort of carry the stress outside of the family home with
they
them. Yeah.
do. They even
Yeah.
have trouble paying attention
Yeah.
sometimes at
Yeah.
school. I'm just going to let my dog out who's whimpering.
Of course. Of course. This is what happens when we come to you like this. Um, I think one of the last things that Yael and I wanted to talk to you about is, well, we're both very much aware that it's a very stressful time, stressful for adults, and now stressful for children. So we're talking about this quarreling that goes on amongst the adults in the household. But in terms of siblings and quarreling and the constant noise and a lot of the physical behaviors that tend to come because kids even have less ability to self-regulate than we do, so they can go 0 to 10 like that, or nobody says anything, they just grab or they just slap or push. So perhaps some of the things that could help parents to work through those things for their children. Have you got suggestions there, Yael?
Yeah, I do. But before we get started on how siblings react with one another, I wanted to say
Yeah,
one more thing about parents' conflict, which is
absolutely.
to say that, when I was suggesting before for parents to say, we still love each other, even if we're fighting, in certain homes, um, that may not be the case any longer,
Yeah,
unfortunately. And
yeah,
perhaps things are at another level, and some parents may be thinking separation, divorce, maybe things have been lingering for many years and things have just gotten to a head, and
right,
they're waiting for the quarantine to end to
right.
take things further. If it too difficult to resolve conflicts between parents, then I just wanted to suggest getting professional virtual therapy at this time, which is very available and even free in certain venues.
Hmm.
Um, and I think I would just want to put it out there that if anybody is looking for such services, please feel free to contact me.
Oh, thank
I
you.
would be more than happy to help.
Okay, that's
But
great.
talking about siblings fighting,
Yeah,
you know, I think right now, whatever happened before with siblings is, again, as we said before, it's all going to get exacerbated now,
yeah,
right? The sharing is going to be that much more intense and um, not evident. Um, it's going to be a lot of trying to interfere and help kids, make better decisions. But as we do in school, it just comes down to giving the younger ones the words that they may not have, um, and also modeling for them what sharing looks like. And in
mhm,
fact, even playing games with them,
yeah,
maybe while you're having a meal, even you're sharing something. Here, you have half this banana and I'll have the other half. Look how nice it is. We're sharing this together, right?
yes,
So whatever we can do as parents. Having said that, I also want to say that with older children, we don't always need to rush in and we certainly don't want to take sides, but we don't always want to fix the children's problems, right? We want to let them work through their conflicts a little bit if they already have the words and if they've already practiced certain skills,
mhm,
interactive skills.
mhm.
But we never want to take sides and
No,
direct.
I think almost as when we were in school, you want to facilitate, you want to help them to be able to get to that point because the next time you might not be there,
Mhm.
you know.
Right.
And so again, you're imparting a life lesson, and taking advantage of, as we teachers would say, a teachable moment. Um,
And we want
I
to talk
think,
about feelings too, right?
of course, and
And
just
about fairness. This is
I was
our
just about to say,
opportunity actually to
sometimes
have
it's
them at
just
home.
about fairness. Yeah, yeah.
Another thing is, I think it's really important at this time for children, because we're so lacking in our own space right now. It's so important that certain toys get delineated to certain children, whatever their favorite toys might be. If
Mhm.
it's not a favorite toy of the sibling as well, of course. But it's okay for each child to have a few of their very own things, as well as sharing all the other toys.
Okay.
I think that's an important point to make at this time. And then also, you know, I think a lot of times I'm hearing from parents that the older sibling is doing homework, and the younger sister or brother is frustrated because they don't have anything to do and they just want to play with their
Right.
older sibling. I think if that's the case, it's really important to help them set up playtime in the schedule of the day, and to help reinforce that for the younger child, to remind them that right now the older sibling is doing homework, and at this time, you
They'll
know,
be
at a particular time, they will have a chance to play together.
sure.
Um,
Do you think special time is something that's important? In, no, we've had parents that have, again, especially at the children's center, because we can have very young siblings and then children that are up in Kidsport. And just that feeling of parents being able to say, okay, this is our time together. And, and for your younger sibling, we'll have that time together.
It's the
So
most important.
everybody feels,
I think it's the most important, and nothing tells a child more that you value them than them hearing that you want to spend time with
right.
them alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's what builds the trust. That's what builds that connection. And, the times that you do need to place limits later on, at least you're building on the connection that you've built during those play times together, during that special time of cuddling and being together and laughing and maybe talking about what most interests them in their play,
Yeah.
right? Like literally getting on the floor and playing Lego with them for just 15-20 minutes a day even.
Yeah,
But
but those are the happy, use the expression happy habits. Like those are the things that used to bring the family happiness before we were so distracted with such doom and gloom.
right,
Pardon the expression. So,
now
bringing those
parents are
back.
so overwhelmed that
Yeah,
it's hard to factor in that quality time alone because all the kids are around if it's a
yeah,
multi child home.
yeah,
So they feel like they're spending all day with the family, but is the child getting that quality time? That's what I think everyone has to ask themselves
yeah. And
with
I think
either parent.
it's it's okay. And I think becomes the hard part, because it's something that we have to sort of retrain ourselves. And what do they say about, like, forming a good habit takes, I don't know how many days, far too many in my book, whatever the number is, whether it's 60 or 90 or whatever. But having the ability to sort of say, okay, I'm going to stop, drop, breathe, I'm just, and kind of instill that in my children, where it's just, okay, it's not going right, and I want to overreact. My gut instinct, my knee-jerk reaction wants to kick in, but to have the ability to go, wait a minute, I got to stop myself. Okay, let me take a breath. Is this really that stressful? Can we figure out a way to diffuse it?
Yeah.
Because we are a family,
And you can also empower the little ones,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If you hear the older sibling say something maybe a little too strong to a
Mhm,
younger child, it's
mhm,
okay to go to the younger child where you don't want to rush in to correct anything, right? It's okay to take your younger child and say, I heard your sister use hurtful words. You can tell your sister next time, I don't like it when you tease me,
mhm.
right? Giving them the words to stand up for themselves and really express their feelings in a way that will be heard.
Yeah. I, I,
Well,
I think for you and I, now that we've chatted away on this, that, it comes down to understanding. We can't eliminate the factors that are out there, and every day seems to be about change. Just when we think they've proven something or they've offered something, we get new information. But the things that we do have control over are how we treat each other, especially our family members. So I think if we can just sort of stop and remember that, and try to, as you started to say, the empathy piece, the understanding piece, the patient piece, there's
right.
a lot of grace in that. And
There is. And, we just want to build positive family habits during this
yeah,
time, too. This is
yeah,
where we build that resilience in each other, right? Instead of knocking each other down, this is where we're going to come together as a family to say, let's set up some rules that are going to work for us because I hear that you're having a problem with this and you're having a problem with that. Let's build rules around this so that we can take care of your needs.
yeah.
So this is now about taking something that may have been a little negative, right? The quarreling, the conflict, the daily sort of bickering, and maybe taking some small steps towards a more positive family experience. And
Absolutely.
mixing in the laughter and the tickling and the cuddling at some point in the day, right? Not all day, it doesn't have to happen all day. so important that everybody have their own time too, but at some point coming together.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much for all your suggestions, Yael.
Thank you, Paula.
And we hope that you've enjoyed the conversation today, and we hope to be back with you soon. If you've got anything that you'd like us to particularly research or share with you, do not hesitate to reach out to either one of us. I can be
We love
reached
the
at,
feedback.
yeah, we do. We
Love
love
the
the
feedback.
feedback.
So please,
Yeah.
let us know if any of this is helping, or if you'd like more information on other topics. It's sort of what drives us to create the topics for the next videos.
Sure. Yeah, Al, you want to just give them quickly your email?
Sure. My email is ysommer@pwchildrenscenter.org.
Okay, and I can be found at PWALL at pwchildrencenter.org. So saying that, I
Wish
guess we'll
you're all
say
well.
goodbye. Yeah, stay safe and stay well, everyone. We'll see you soon. Bye
Bye.
bye now.